Welcome to the July meeting of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority Economy Committee. Just to note that this meeting is being broadcast live as well on webcast, so I can see everybody's been really good and sat in the seats with the nameplates in front, so it's obvious online to people online who's speaking. I'm just going to turn to the formal items at the top of the agenda. Have we got any apologies for absence, please, James?
Yeah, we have quite a few. We have Councillor Imran Khan, Councillor Kayleen Brooks, and we've got Councillor Timmins in her place. Neither Councillor Jo Hepworth or her sub, Councillor Jack Hemingway could come. Farah Butt, Fatima Khan Shah, Colin Booth, David Malone, Martin Stowe, but we've got Gareth Scargill instead. Lee Viney, Emma Campbell, Natasha Barber Evans, and Lisa Robinson can't come as substitute for Councillor Khan either. Okay.
Thank you. I'm now going to turn to the committee and see if there's any members that need to disclose any pecuniary interests. Don't see anybody putting their hands up. Item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting we had on the 27th of March this year. Is everybody happy with those? I take it everybody is. That's great, thank you. We're on to item 5, which is governance arrangements. Michelle, please.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a short paper with 2 appendices to update this committee on the governance arrangements that were approved by the Combined Authority at its AGM last month. So you have got the terms of reference attached in the appendices and the membership. It is worth noting that in the meanwhile, Councillor Lewis has been meeting with potential new members of this committee, and we'll hope to be able to update you on that at the next meeting.
It's great, thank you. And is everybody happy with the governance paper, please? We note the governance arrangements. That's great, thank you. On to the chair's update and a few things I'd like to mention here before we get on to the agenda. We've had some great events in West Yorkshire over the last few months. I've seen some of the people here at Climb 25, at UK Reef, at Reset North, and some of the other events here. Just in terms of the Combined Authority, we've had 3 meetings since the Economy Committee last met. We've looked at bus franchising, looked at investment priorities. We've agreed for something that kept keyboard warriors on social media going for a good few days was the name of the new franchise bus network. Train and tram network will be the Weaver network. We launched that with the bright green bus to show what they'll all look like in the future, and that was something that will show real change in the quality of transport in West Yorkshire over the years ahead. We agreed the setting up of the Healthy Working Life Board, which is the Mayor will chair alongside the ICB to support the work we talk about here a lot around supporting people to remain in or return to work. We've looked at the, again, work we've talked about here before, the new model for business access to finance in investment, and we agreed to set into the DWP with the Economic Inactivity Trailblazer for Connect to Work, and we're also part of NHS England's Health and Growth Accelerator. So some good stuff going through there. Just turning to our agenda today, so we've got the main items coming up, and then at the end, just to warm people up, we have the items noted for information only as people know on those. We don't automatically have a discussion on those, but always happy if anybody's got any questions on those for officers to pick up and to flag up as well. Those are ones of interest to the committee, but we're not looking for a decision today. Okay, I'm going to move on to item 7, which is the economic updates, and Peter Glover, please. Peter.
Can I hand over to my colleague Guy to provide the introduction, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So, as usual, I'll make an economic update with the latest data that we have at the national and regional data. So, starting with the macroeconomic context at the national level. Maize inflation stood at 3.4% at the annual basis, slightly down from 3.5% in April. And the biggest downward contribution came from transport, housing, and household services, while this was partially offset by the contribution of food and non-alcoholic beverages, furniture, and household goods. Some of these goods are durable and important, so imported. So it may has to do with some of the global instability we've seen. In terms of interest rates, in May, Bank of England cut the rate 0.25 percentage points to 4.25%. This was the fourth cut since the summer of 2024 and reflects that Bank of England is confident about the progress in the disinflation process in the last 2 years. The GDP data and labor market have been slowing down, so reduces the risk of inflationary pressures according to the bank. In terms of economic growth, we have the monthly GDP estimates for April that showed a little bit of a contraction in monthly terms, but 0.3%. This is almost statistical noise, and it shows a decline in services and manufacturing, while construction had output grow by almost 1%. In annual terms, GDP is 0.9% above what it was in April 2024. When it comes to regional data, we recently had the 2023 GVA data, so it's a bit delayed, but it shows some new trends, especially compared with the pre-pandemic economy West Yorkshire. In terms of growth, it was in line with the national average, growing just 0.4%, slightly above 0.3% in the UK. But in the previous 2 years, we were performing much stronger. So the economy compared with 2019 is 6.5% larger, while in the UK just 2.6%. So our performance since 2019 has been way above the UK average. But this hasn't been uniform across districts. We have to take a little bit, a pinch of salt, the estimates at the local authority, but this suggests that Leeds is leading the way. So, and the sectors that have been growing the most are within services, so mostly around office services, so administrative and support, information and communication, professional services. And one sector that performed very well and above the UK average everywhere, not only in Leeds, was construction, growing at almost 10% last year. And all local authorities had stronger growth than the UK. On the opposite spectrum, manufacturing has been struggling for the second year in a row after having a very strong performance for a decade between 2011 and 2021. From these figures, our main takeaways would be, without being very conclusive, West Yorkshire seems to be more dependent on tradable services centered in Leeds office-related activities. And manufacturing has been struggling, but we cannot tell if it is temporary due to energy shocks and other things. When we look at sector by sector within manufacturing, we perform like the UK in general, so it seems more about the composition. We are exposed to parts of manufacturing that we've been struggling the most, like textiles, chemicals, and not so much about our sectors of manufacturing being performing worse in the same industries as the UK. In terms of productivity, we got productivity for 2023. We have been stagnated, but there was a decline in the UK. So without being super positive, we converged to 89% of UK productivity per worker. But there's been a decline in the number of hours worked, and job growth has been not so positive. So we need to take this as a pinch of salt. Could be that low productivity activities are disappearing, and that is boosting our productivity level. So we cannot know. So we don't. It's not conclusive, but we have to take that as a possibility. In terms of business and labor market in the last months, business startups are doing better than the end of 2024, which was particularly negative, but still slightly below what they were beginning of that year. It's in line with the national average, and the labor market has been showing signs of softening, with the number of employees in the first 3 months of 2025 below what they were previous year, and wage growth is still positive but declining, and declining at a faster rate of growth than the UK. In terms of these metrics are performing against the local growth plan, productivity and GVA have been performing in line with our target, which is positive. The number of jobs and business creation, we don't have the definitive data, but they are unlikely to have been closing the gap in the last couple of years. And in terms of skills, it seems to be some progress at level 4 and above. That's all.
Thank you, Guy. Are there any questions or comments on this item, please? Barney, please.
When you said questions or comments, mine sort of a vague thought. I think it's really quite interesting, especially, I mean, it's what we all know in a way, that Leeds is doing better than the other parts of West Yorkshire. And I suppose the challenge for us is, at what point does the success in Leeds translate into better performance in the other parts of West Yorkshire? And within that, I wonder how we actually measure what is Leeds and what is West Yorkshire, because on a very small scale, some of the small, sole traders I'll meet them in Huddersfield, and I'll say, oh, where are you based? They say, well, actually, Leeds, because they'll have a Leeds postal address because it looks a lot better for what they do. So I wonder if that is anywhere in it. But the other thing I was thinking, and it's this sort of is some of the other issues, items that come up later as well. What this highlights is as always, is a real imbalance of those doing well and those not doing so well. And think about the whole, we talk about the inclusive economy, so we are looking to try and help areas who aren't doing so well. I wonder, at what point do we start looking, or can we get evidence of what types of businesses aren't performing so well, and actually targeting them for support rather than the more traditional approach we take, which is we put support plans out and we wait for people to apply for them, and the winners necessarily apply for them. And within that, if I might as well get one of my favourite hobby horses in on this while I'm at it, when I'm on a run. But we always talk about advanced manufacturing, whereas actually what we've highlighted here is that more traditional manufacturing is struggling. So it's one of the things we need to do, is the more traditional manufacturing, we need to make them advanced manufacturers, because it's only a difference of how they do it, not a difference of what they're doing. So was that a question?
I think in there was a question about how we can use the interventions we talk about today to, as well as knowing what's going on, about how we can get those improvements, sort of targeted improvements in the economy. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that was the thing. I mean, I'd offer an observation. So as on the, I always think and I've got the benefit of staring at a map of West Yorkshire as I'm sat here, and I think one of the, there are parts of the Leeds economy that are not doing well at all, and I think there's always the risk. When we talk about Leeds, it's reflecting on what parts of Leeds economy we know are doing well, such as financial and professional services, data, medical stuff. There's parts of the last item of the report, the last item of the papers is a report on Wakefield futures around the Wakefield district. To be honest, large parts of the Leeds district, including my own council ward, probably reading that paper probably reflects a position that a lot of residents face in Leeds rather than what's happening. So I do think there are, the core city, as a core city in West Yorkshire, as a regional economic centre, are lots of good things going on in Leeds, and we do lots of work around making sure those growth sectors are performing well, and whether it's work on growth, inward investment, strategic policy to make sure that's the case. But I don't think it's the case that everything, the jam is spread thinly right across the entire Leeds district, and I think that does lead on to some of the points we're making about how we can, like I say, some of the things we talk about today, how we can make sure we are both geographically and also in terms of businesses and sectors, making sure we are having the maximum effect with the resources we've got across the county. I don't know if anybody else wants to come in on that. Sarah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I totally agree, and I think what's really interesting is that lots of us in our areas have, that the whole like Calderdale particularly has really good SME culture, but that's really important, because that's where innovation starts. There's often innovation in those sort of small businesses, and I think and this cuts all the way through so many of the items that are on the paper today, which is really exciting, really positive, about how can we make sure that people are skilled, people know that starting up a small business can be a really good way of being innovative and then moving on to sort of maybe a larger business, or coming up with an idea that could be taken up by a larger business. So I think we really need a healthy ecosystem all the way through, don't we? And I think business ecosystems are no different from natural ecosystems. So I would sort of echo what Barney's saying about making sure that where there's targeting or where there's sort of like support, that we really make sure that we can get out to all of, including the SMEs and the micro businesses, because that could be the start of a lot of things for the future, for 20 years' time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.
Carl, please.
Cheers. It'd be good to, thank you so much. It'd be good to hear what the survival rates of businesses were, not just a new start. So over a 2 and 5-year period, it'd be good to see those graphs, and also where we can identify failure rates as well, to ensure that we stay ahead of the mark in terms of business growth. I agree with Barney 100%. Leeds, is kind of not propping up. That's not a nice way to put it, but it is carrying West Yorkshire along with it, and a few of the other areas are doing their bit. But we do need to do more concentrated work with Bradford, and I think we have the opportunity going forward in the new financial year. And I don't think we need to be apologetic about that. We just need to be quite pragmatic, in my view, and looking at where some of those growth sectors are. And where Bradford does have genuine uniqueness in the region, and concentrating efforts in those areas would make sense. And I think we're to be responsible as a committee, we need to come, at the next meeting, get some idea of what that would look like.
Thank you. Martin, please.
Yeah, it's just a comment about the position we're in the world at the moment, and these trade agreements, which are happening or not happening, is creating absolute turmoil, and we'll see that that only affects the manufacturers. There is no tariffs that I'm aware of yet on the different services, and Leeds is obviously very strong on services, and Huddersfield and Halifax are stronger on manufacturing, and Wakefield. And I think we need to think, what can we do? I know that we're sat in this room while other people are making decisions, but it really is stopping businesses having the confidence to either look for new markets or to continue supplying their existing people that they supply, not just in the States but everywhere. I recently looked at trying to export some products to India, and after 3 weeks of trying to work out if there was a tariff or not, it just became impossible. And that's someone that works inside the system. So, yeah, I just think we need to think about it more. This is having a really damaging effect, and if our manufacturers need more support to see them through this time, then how can we offer that?
Thank you. Does anybody else want to? Graham, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, we know the manufacturing sector is under pressure, but in Kirklees, we've got some significant investment going on. Some of our companies are growing really well at the moment, and as I say, some new factories being built, people looking to the future. So it's not all doom and gloom in the manufacturing sector. Let's be positive about it. Where they're getting it right, they're getting it really right at the moment. And as I say, we have some real positives coming forward in the next couple of years.
Thank you. And I think one of the things, it's not specifically on the agenda today, but sort of clearly the government are setting their industrial strategy in some of the areas like defence spending, where they're looking at sort of clearly having UK supply chains very much as part of that, is something that we might not have BAE Systems at the top of the chain in terms of defence in this part of the world, but there are plenty of businesses that do feed into defence supply chains as well, and things like that. So it is around having that visibility of areas of work there. Is there anybody else wants to come in on this item? No, that's great. So the recommendation is we consider the content of the report and highlight implications, which I think we've done. Thank you. So shall we move on to the business growth paper, please, Sarah, item 8.
Thank you. So this paper sets out our new approach to business growth in West Yorkshire. It builds very much on the local growth plan that was published just before Christmas, and signals a bit of a shift really in terms of the role that we play as a combined authority. Historically, we've probably played a bit more of that delivery role, in terms of the LEP and that kind of, direct business support. But the ambitions in the local growth plan are significant, and so we cannot do this by ourselves. We have to work better with the ecosystem. We've talked a lot about ecosystems, with the ecosystem, with partners across West Yorkshire. So our evolving role as a combined authority in supporting businesses is twofold. It's about providing that leadership, progressing those strategic interventions to address market failure or shape the market, so directly intervening. But it's also, we've talked a bit about this earlier, about enabling the system, convening, facilitating, enabling others to do great stuff, and us actually getting out of the way and making that happen. So the key areas that we're going to be focusing on is around ensuring that wider support is available in West Yorkshire for businesses to succeed, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's always about us doing it or providing it, but making sure it is here in the region, working with the British Business Bank, working with Innovate UK, working with others to make sure that provision is available in West Yorkshire. Working with partners to influence and shape that activity. Again, partners like Innovate UK, British Business Bank are just two, but the universities, wider sectors, how do we make sure we play into that and make sure that we are collaborating, not duplicating or cutting across one another? Really importantly, given the massive investment in things like mass transit, bus reform, how do we make sure that our businesses, and defence actually, how do we make sure our businesses can access and benefit from these transformational investments? Making sure that our businesses are at the fore of those opportunities. Reducing and removing those barriers to growth, and whether that's about working with government, lobbying, making the case, working with our business representative groups, business lobbying groups to make that case and make that case strongly, using the power of the mayor to and the situation we're in currently in terms of political landscape to really make the case for things that need to change and why they need to change. And focus on priority sectors and clusters to drive the change that we need to see, whilst not forgetting the rest of the business base that we've just talked about earlier. We know we've got some significant strengths in things like professional and business, financial services, but there's the rest of the business base that we need to make sure are supported to grow and reach their potential. And we will be intervening where we need to intervene, where we need to commission programmes and activity, where there's market failure or where we are best placed to do that. So the paper sets out 5 key areas, and these are all in the local growth plan. Just to reiterate, turbocharging growth in priority sectors, access to finance and making sure all businesses can access the finance that they need to grow, innovation and positioning West Yorkshire as that innovation centre of excellence, and what that means within that around connecting the dots, making sure that things are joined up and connected, and we're promoting the assets that we've got. Making sure that we're supporting our businesses around good business behaviours, so particularly around fair, good work, but also around decarbonisation and making sure that we're supporting them to be better businesses and helping them along that journey. And then the underpinning infrastructure and ecosystem capacity building, and making sure that we've got that navigation and support infrastructure that is connected, responsive and coherent. No business gets lost along the way. And the ecosystem, partners in the system, are supported to do the great stuff they're doing and flourish and support businesses to thrive. As well as all that, making sure that businesses can access the skills they need. And we've got a couple of papers later on talking about that skills piece specifically. To do all that, we do need to target businesses better collectively, and I'd segment which the businesses we're targeting and identifying and promoting that support to more effectively, going to Barney's point, and making sure that we're working much more with partners, a lot of whom are around the table today, to make this happen and to realise our ambitions, because it's a collective goal and a collective endeavour.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, barely formed thoughts anybody wants to anybody wants to provide at this item? Sarah, please.
Okay. So I think the role of the CA focusing on sort of leadership and enabling is really good. It's really good at a high level. It helps us be really clear collectively about what we're doing and everything in terms of supporting business. I think it's and you've already mentioned it's really important to think about the importance of creating those conditions for productivity, infrastructure and employment and everything. And it's really great to be. I sit on quite a few different committees, and as lead member for Regeneration and Transport, I have a lot of interconnectedness, and it's really great to see all of these things really being looked at together. Transport, health, as well, and culture as well, all sort of like being seen as being really important. So all of those things, those conditions, but as well as the more sort of conventional sort of business support. I think. Obviously, growth anywhere in the combined authority is welcomed, But I think in order to achieve the shared inclusive economy goals, which was affirmed in a combined authority report in February, I think we need to remember that this is a narrow interpretation of our required focus. If we're just thinking about the turbocharging of growth on high productivity centres, I know we've sort of touched on this already. I think working closely with foundational economy is really important, and key sectors like construction and retail then allows us to help people get into work and stay healthy in work. I think encouraging good business behaviours work stream might pick up on some of this, especially with the Fair Work Charter. I would say that there's possibly a bit of a lack of clarity regarding support for businesses start up beyond March 2026. And there are some hints that it might be folded into the business support infrastructure, emphasising the importance of start-up support to create the future pipeline of businesses and productivity would be helpful, I think. I'd also like to emphasise the importance of the green tech sector, regionally and nationally, in terms of being a growth sector. We need to be mindful of the importance of this in delivering our other goals, like warm and healthy homes, for example, and reducing pollution and carbon emissions and increasing the health of the population. So yesterday at the committee that I was at, which was I can never remember the title of it, it's Regeneration, Place and Housing, I think. We were very much talking about that and talking about the skills needed and the growth of that sector. And I think that's, it's one of the, I think that's the biggest growth sector in the UK at the moment, isn't it? So I think really, being able to make sure that we're also supporting that as well would help it in other things. Anyway, that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Alex, please.
Just on the Innovation Centre of Excellence, when you mention innovation, you often default to universities. So I just want to make aware that lots of innovation happens outside, but particularly looking at apprenticeships, when you are looking at business challenges, some of the best innovation comes from our apprentices in our local area. So don't just necessarily look at the bits that the CA funds, but also, that much broader ecosystem of apprentices as well.
Barney, please.
I think I'm probably just repeating Councillor Courtney's point, but it's worth repeating. It is that startup will always have a special need for support, and I don't think that goes against what's in here. I think it just, within the inverted pyramid triangle, I think a tier one, part of that universal support has to recognise that there's always going to be a big section of that which is support for startups, but that doesn't necessarily mean that extra resources have to go in, because it's about working out where are the organisations that already provide support for startups, and there's a lot of them out there, and it's quite an attractive thing for a lot of organisations to provide as well. So a lot of people will do it for free or very low cost. So, but I think it's just keep coming back to, we've recognised in the stats we were given that there is an issue with startups. It's been fairly flat, and also as Carl said, talking about failure rates. Well, actually, if we set them up properly, we're going to have some effect on improving that failure rate. Or reducing the failure rate, I don't know. And so I just think we need to always keep that in mind. And although it doesn't need a whole extra paragraph, it probably just needs to keep being in there, just to keep everyone on board with that.
Thank you. Graham, please.
Thank you. So the report does focus on high growth business sector clusters in reflection of the government strategy. And although the reference to health and life sciences is, of course, absolutely welcome, we don't think there's enough in there about the advanced manufacturing and engineering sector, because that is really important. Because they said if we're going to invest all this money in arms, a lot of that manufacturing is highly technical, is around very detailed pieces of engineering. You can't just put, I can assure you, can't just put a missile on like the blue touch paper these days. There's some very sophisticated pieces of engineering, and those are advanced engineering. So I'd like more reference to that, because that is one of, certainly in Kirklees, one of our growth areas, and we are looking to eventually do some work with Sheffield around their advanced manufacturing as well. So I think that needs more emphasis, or some emphasis in there.
Carl, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd really commend the report, and in particular the message about we're in this together, we all have a role, a very strong message, and the actions around that include inclusive growth. And I'm so pleased to see so many inclusive economy leads around. I am absolutely fascinated of this role. You know, so you know, but practically applying the narrative of inclusive growth is so important, and it goes along with that message of you know, everyone has a role to play in that growth agenda. And when you empower people, as the Combined Authority has been doing recently through the Inclusive Growth Development Fund and other plans going forward, hopefully into 2026, 27, with the integrated settlement, I think even though we don't have business links and those those kind of mechanisms that brought more of a community involvement into business support, I think these things will definitely help. And so, yeah, it's a really strong message and an encouraging one.
Thank you. Gareth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of one of the universities in the room, and Sarah, you mentioned that, of course, this will only work, or not only work, but having universities on side. But I think we need to be working collaboratively, as we've proven through the Individual Entrepreneurs Programme, where our 3 universities working collaboratively, and working, you know, alongside the higher education and the independent training providers, I think is really important, because we've got some world-class leading researchers in this region that can really help these high growth clusters. And I know we're committed, and I'm sure Henry's from Huddersfield, that working collaboratively we can really support this programme. And just on the Innovation Centre of Excellence, I remember at the last meeting we spoke about it not being a physical hub. However, we mustn't forget that to make this work, I call them creative collisions, people need to come together. So I don't know if there is an infrastructure or a place to come together, because at some point the existing assets we have, if we're going to be growing all these businesses, where are these businesses going to live, where are they going to grow, and where are they going to call home? So I think we need to consider that.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands up. Is there anything you want to pick up, Sarah, please?
So there's a lot there, but there was really, really great feedback. Innovation, infrastructure, I think it's about connecting the dots. I absolutely agree about the places are important, in innovation centres as well as broader community spaces, actually, because going to your point, innovation is not just about universities, it's about what happens in businesses. Advanced manufacturing is a #1 priority. It is one of the priority sectors. It's in the local growth plan. It's in the cluster action plans that we're going to be talking about later. So it's absolutely in there. And I think we started to sometimes use the phrase advancing manufacturing, to go to Barney's point, I think it was, because it's about moving that dial, moving that forward. Startup support, absolutely. There's lots of conversations about what that looks like, but we need to do that as an ecosystem, working in partnership around, going to your point, Barney, about what is already out there, what's being delivered elsewhere, and where are the gaps, and what role can, going back to the paper, what role can we play most effectively in that? But loads of great points, so thank you very much.
Thank you. So we were asked to consider the progress and provide a steer, which I think we've done in the recommendation. So if everybody's happy with the recommendation, we'll move on to item 9, please, Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper item 9 is the Region of Learning and Creativity Strategy. It outlines our intent to develop just that. The Region of Learning and Creativity Strategy will incorporate and replace the existing employment and skills framework, which people may recall was written in 2020, and quite a lot has changed in that time period. It absolutely flows from local growth plan and will help us sort of further develop how we meet the challenges that are within that document and rise to the opportunities within the region. It will articulate how we deliver the mayoral ambitions and also define really our role as an MSA and our wider system convening needs across the sector and meeting needs of West Yorkshire residents and businesses. Simultaneously, we will refresh another document that was written in 2020, which was the adult education budget strategy then. That was very much about how we as a combined authority would move into the commissioning role of the adult education budget and how we were devolution ready. This will hopefully show how we are integrated settlement ready and building on the lessons that we've learned in the last 4 years. Really looking forward to us having a holistic fund and how we determine how that is spent within West Yorkshire. So that will be sort of more of a practical commissioning document sitting underneath the strategy. So the paper itself covers how these different strategies align with the work and health plan, and also how the LSIP will play into that relationship as well, alongside the timescales for development for the 2 strategies. It reminds us as well of the core objectives that we set out for the region of learning and creativity itself in the local growth plan. This is a lovely, fairly complicated diagram on page 64, but the three core things that the local growth plan set out for the region of learning and creativity is to strengthen and create a forward-looking, flexible and sustainable education and training system, to support people through a system and make sure that that works for them, and of course to collaborate with employers to ensure that we're getting that co-investment into the system and making sure that we're delivering for employers alongside. So the paper itself, this is really, I suppose, the start of the conversation. The paper itself just invites the committee to consider what are the key issues that we need to address in our region of learning and creativity strategy. Are the policy areas that are defined in that lovely diagram on page 64, are there other areas that we need to identify and we need to consider as we're consulting across West Yorkshire with our stakeholders? We have outlined some of the stakeholders for consultation. I'm sure we have missed some, so please make sure that we're having the conversations that we need to have across the area. And then, most fundamentally, how else would the committee like to engage with this consultation as we move things forward over summer?
Thank you, Lindsay. Again, I'll throw it open to the committee. Martin, please.
Thanks for that, Lindsay. The local skills improvement plan, there's a change to the governance, which is still a bit unclear because the guideline comes out soon. Yes. And at the moment in your diagram, it's sort of something on its own sat out here, and obviously we want it to be part of the idea of the local skills improvement plan is to speak to employers and to feed in their views as to what their requirements are likely to be and what they think the skills, the future requirements of skills is in order to affect funding decisions that the public sector make, and they make themselves and help them articulate what they're doing. And it's really important at this stage for me that we think how this fits in with what's still a new governance structure developing within the combined authority itself. So I'm currently the chair of the LSIP in the area, so we'd be really keen to work with the combined authority to look at how this goes, how it goes forward. And it's about businesses and business representative organisations. And there's just one mention that you'll have to forgive me for making. This is no means a criticism of the organisation that are the lead designated employment relationship body, because we partner them to deliver it. But the government has no right to designate who an ERB is. We're all ERBs. There's just one that's leading on one aspect of it, and just here it says the designated ERB. That's the only thing I can make. Yeah.
Thanks. Do you want to pick that point up, Lindsay? I think it's a very specific question for Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, this is where sort of the timing of things in terms of the governance and in terms of the expectation, and also the challenge of integrated settlement and the timescales for that delivery just don't quite sing together. But absolutely, you know, I appreciate in the diagram it sort of sits alongside, but that employer objectivity is really key in making sure that we deliver the right system. So it's it will be quite close work, I think, between the people in this room and ourselves to make sure that as all these things are developed, they talk to each other and they play a key role in articulating what needs to happen in the system.
Thank you. Martin, again, please.
We mentioned in the chair's brief at the beginning that we're recruiting some new private sector members to the various boards, and it would be great to look at how we engage those and how we get someone to look at the governance going forward with those new members as well.
Thank you. Alex, please.
Yeah, just some of the areas, I think I mentioned it at the last committee meeting, but obviously we've got growth sectors and there's lots of talk about some of the big priority areas, but we've also got a mass of people that are never going to work in fintech or health tech, so making sure that any future plans recognise the lower level needs of our communities and not just the want to get everybody into those nice headline grabby sectors. So obviously we'd expect or would want to see a strategy that does encompass that all and doesn't just focus on the growth, but also we've got lots of unemployed people in this region. We've got a ton of neat young people, more than any other place in the country. So making sure that we reference that in a skills policy, as well as being aspirational and hitting those headliney ones as well. And then also those pathways, I think in a refreshed skills strategy or adult education strategy, whatever, you can still talk about those pathways into adult skills and what opportunities there are available for all, you know, whether we're just focusing on 19 plus or not. I think the combined authority can have a better recognition of that pathway into 19, even though you've only got the funding powers for 19 plus, if that makes sense. And then also obviously not focusing on just the bits that you procure. Again, apprentices are massive economic contributors to West Yorkshire, so we don't want to not include them when we are looking at a skills strategy, because we want to make sure that everybody is included, not just the bits that you procure. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Alex. And of course, the combined authorities is of the councils who are responsible for people up to the age of 19 as well. So, you know, some of us, the people that do that are sat around this table as well. So I think that is really, really important that the work we do as councils, with young people as well, feeding into and feeds into that as well. Did anybody else have a hand up, please? Sarah, please.
Thank you. Yes, so the strategy, it's great and offers a really good cohesive high-level approach to aligning skills, employment and innovation across the region, which is great, and promoting place-based planning, so it's sort of up to us as well, and ensuring that our local priorities are reflected. I think in terms of your questions, I think emphasising access, inclusion and digital skills is really, really important for us in Calderdale. Adding some of the stakeholders, I would say young people, making sure that we're talking to young people of all ages really, and also the voluntary sector as well, because the voluntary sector is really heavily involved in delivery of a lot of skills and training, and also the voluntary sector is such an excellent way to get people back into employment after periods of economic inactivity. So that's a shout out for the VCS. Ensuring targeted support for creative and cultural sectors, I would say, because I think that's also, you know, I know that's one of Chase's focuses as well, and requesting dedicated consultation opportunities in all of the regions. So I mean, you know, I'd say for Calderdale, but I would say it was the same probably for Wakefield, Kirklees, Bradford as well. That just to make sure that we've got some dedicated consultation opportunities within the local authorities, so that we can really that we're involved with as well as local authorities, so we know that we're getting to ask and consult with the people that actually will have most benefit to get their voices heard. So just a plea for inclusion there. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to come back in on Alex's point, actually. So the Mayor often references a great project in terms of skilling people up in telecoms. So I think in Homewood, in Bradford, which even though it's a different authority, it's only about 15 minutes away from me. And a project like that, in an area like that, is really valuable in terms of getting people into work. And just going back and referencing one of the points on point 7, the economic update, and the lower rate of wage rises in the region. And it put it down to, in that part of the report, that actually people in a higher paid job are still there, but we're taking less people on in those entry point jobs with the skills. So for me, I would like to see in it how we can get into communities that may be more deprived, that have high unemployment, and take into them communities these courses where people can develop skills, harness some of the government money that they're putting into construction, for example, and upskilling people in that. So, getting into them areas and really making it inclusive.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in on this item, please? Okay, is there anything you want to wrap up with, Lindsay, please?
Just to thank you all for your comments. I mean, certainly I think that challenge of how we rise to the opportunities of growth, while absolutely making sure that we address the skills needs of the foundational economy, are really critical I suppose there's many comments which I'll just make sure we build into into the consultation, but also I've completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. It was something Alex said. I'm sure.
It's easy to do, isn't it?
I'll just close, but yeah, it is a real challenge to get that balance right, and I suppose the challenge that we will need to address in consultation with yourselves is that it is a finite pot, and what we need to do is in terms of the adult skills commissioning plan, is a finite pot, and we really need to consider that investment level. So much of adult skills fund is very much about basic skills and level 2, so that is a core focus then. But absolutely, the region of learning and creativity strategy needs to step outside the contractual relationship and the funding and commissioning power, and really talk about everything in the system and how we make that work across the various levels of the economy and those pathways and entry points as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to turn to the recommendations and check everybody's happy with those. That's great, thanks. We'll move on to item 10, please, Michelle. Okay, thanks very much. This paper follows on from the one that Lindsay's just presented, to give you some detail on the future ambitions for employment and skills and some of the development priorities that are underway. And we've structured it in a similar way, so around delivering for people, strengthening the education and training system and collaborating with employers, which again really builds on the approach that Sarah outlined earlier on today, which is about moving away from a transactional approach to supporting employers towards collaboration. Employers have got a stake in the skills system, and it's not necessarily about what we can do for employers, but about how we can drive greater investment from employers in the system as well. So what we're trying to do here is to highlight some of the priorities for addressing some of the challenges and opportunities that we've already heard about today, around the underskilled workforce that we have in West Yorkshire, around barriers to economic participation, particularly ill health, and also about making sure that we have got in the region the workforce that we need to seize the opportunities associated with really transformational investments in trams, in new home building, and in retrofitting homes. And so we've set out here quite a lot of different areas of development that aim to do that, and to address some of the system-wide issues that we have in the region, some of which are national issues, of course, so including technical pathways, helping people understand the technical pathways to work that are available and how best to navigate them, including, it's the first time this has been mentioned today, which is highly unusual, but including the acute shortage that we have of tutors in some of the most in-demand and fastest developing areas of our economy, particularly in the FE system. So there's a huge amount of work underway there. In terms of delivering for people, we've highlighted in particular the need to support people at those key points in their educational journey where the risk is greatest of them falling out of the system, particularly those that face the greatest disadvantage and are at risk of becoming NEET and the future youth unemployed, and then the future adult learners, of course. So the system is interlinked. We've also highlighted some of the work that is underway in the early education and childcare space, which is a new area for the Combined Authority, but which we're interested in for two main reasons. One is the importance of accessible and affordable childcare to enable economic participation, and the other is really the importance of excellent early years education in giving our children the best chance in life, the best start in life. So we've included quite a lot of areas that are in development at the moment. Moving on to collaboration with employers, and that needs to include leadership and management, which is identified here, and the really important link between leadership and management skills and innovation, but also the falling demand for labour in some parts of our economy, which presents a real risk to the employment prospects of those most disadvantaged
of our residents and those new entrants to work. And we're very grateful to members of this committee that are providing advice and insight to the team about the kinds of interventions and incentives that could help de-risk hiring among employers. So there's quite a lot in there, but we're really keen to get your thoughts and your steer around these emerging priorities.
Thank you, Michelle. With the invite to provide a steer, does anybody want to come in on this item, please? Alex, please.
I have to apologise before I come on. So I think it's great that we can see the support for SMEs to recruit their first apprentice. I love that. It says that it's doing it in partnership with the local authority, so I'd just be interested to know what does that look like, because obviously the gatekeepers to SMEs for apprentices are the training providers. So is there, as part of that consultation, a part of that work that the CA are doing with the LAs, is there consultation with the providers who have got those key connections to the SME market? And then there's some, obviously tackling the NEETs, there's some brilliant work happening in Leeds, and obviously the investment of 10 million that's going into Leeds, and the rise in independent training providers that are delivering study programmes and interventions, and the VCS, you know, we can't forget the VCS in terms of that NEET intervention and that risk of NEET work that's happening. So obviously keeping a keen eye on what's happening in Leeds, because we are doing quite a lot of work across Leeds to tackle NEET. So yeah, just if we are looking at something that supports that bridging, for that pilot bridging programme, that it can be open, it can be inclusive, and open to anyone that works with that kind of demographic, and it's not just going to go straight to FE colleges, because actually in Leeds there's a ton more independent training providers delivering than there are colleges at the moment. But I think it's great. It's got everything in it I'd want to see in it, Michelle. So it's tutor shortages, love, only combined authority in the country doing something on tutor shortages. It's really interesting to see how that pans out, and particularly looking at that campaign and those corporate partnerships, I think, are really interesting. Again, there are people like the Ambassador Network, the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network, that are key partners that would want to do that, as well as the other kind of ERBs that. And we've just done a round table with the Chamber of Commerce, so we'll share the findings of that with you as well, around getting industry buy-in to FE. So.
Thank you. Just in case anybody's worried Leeds is getting special treatment, on NEET. So in the late 2000s, early 2010s, there was a lot more babies born, and that's a group of young people that are becoming 16 now. So normally per school year there's about 7,500 children in Leeds. There's a couple of years where that's over 10,000, nearly 11,000 in 1 year. So there's huge. We've had to deal with it with school places, and now that is in terms of further education. Further education and training places. There are a lot more young. There is a group of. There are some age groups where there's a lot more young people than the average year in Leeds, and that's good in terms of, you know, a lot of support coming in for the colleges and training providers, but it also means to recognise that there are more young people who are NEET, which is a challenge that we really want to deal with. So it is there are lots of solutions there, but also is a really big challenge that we're facing here. I'm not sure about the rest of West Yorkshire, but I know that's certainly a real trend in Leeds. Sarah, please.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting, you sort of mentioning it about apprenticeships and stuff, and we're really appreciative in Coaldale of the graduate, the West Yorkshire pilot focusing on SMEs, but I think some apprenticeship support for SMEs would be appreciated, or just sort of how we can support the SMEs in that. And I think, you know, it's partly about the training providers and stuff, but it's just because I think it can be really hard if you're if you're a company with not many employees, then to take on, an apprentice can be quite hard work, can't it? Overall, I think the strategic focus aligns really well with Calderdale's employment and skills framework, which is relatively new, and also our inclusive economy strategy, particularly around tackling economic inactivity and low qualification levels. So that's really positive. I would sort of say that we probably need to really think about place-based targeting, and how we can really sort of target in sort of within different communities. I think the bridging programs and career support are really welcome, but again must reflect sort of local gaps in vocational pathways, especially in health, green, construction and creative sectors. I think they're the areas that need specific targeting. And yeah, great to hear about the acute tutor shortages that mentioned, because we've got that too. But again, so the regional pilots have got to be scalable so that they work in sort of on a about all scales and responsive to local workforce gaps. And again, finally, really pleased to see the look at childcare workforce planning, because it's crucial in order to be able to enable economic participation. And the delivery should align with Calderdale's inclusive economy strategy and target support to disadvantaged families specifically, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Henry, please.
I've actually got one of those 16-year-olds in Leeds that you're referring to.
You need to declare an interest.
So more work experience for 16-year-olds. I finished the GCSEs, just I've got like 10 weeks. I just wanted to say excellent report this, thank you. Really welcome the leadership and management side of it. But I think it's hinted at here, but it'd be good to draw it out. I think for maybe the slightly larger SMEs, it's about building capacity within those organisations and progression routes for the next tier. So often, sometimes people have been there the longest get promoted. It's not necessarily that they've got the right skill set. So I think some of those more informal measures could be encouraged around mentoring and coaching and peer-to-peer support within businesses, just to make sure we're building the pipeline of the next leaders of these businesses.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in on this item? I don't see Michelle. Is there anything to wrap up with, please?
Well, I guess there's a few actions that we'll take away there. So to engage more broadly around barriers to recruiting apprentices, to look at examples in Leeds around voluntary community sector and needs, to look at place-based approaches and embed that. And then there's the steer around leadership and management and pipeline towards leadership roles in larger SMEs. So we shall take those actions away. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation is a committee comments, which I think we have done. So if everybody's happy with that, we'll move on to item 11, please, Callum.
Thank you, Chair. So in recent weeks, the government has published its industrial strategy and some of its sector plans. In these, they've set out their plan for driving growth across the UK over the next 10-year period, with a number of key policy announcements, such as a commitment to consult on industrial energy prices to bring those more in line with comparator countries, new funding and freedoms for combined authorities and others to accelerate the supply of investable sites across the UK, additional capital funding for combined authorities to unlock new growth opportunities, new funding to support creative industries, and a local innovation partnership fund to support innovation ecosystems across the country. Alongside this, they've also included a commitment to fund investment zones in full over the 10-year lifetime of the programme. In addition, the industrial strategy focuses on 8 key sectors for the UK, where government believes the targeted focus from policy will unlock further growth. Government has produced a series of sector plans to that effect, and we await the publication of 3 of these in the coming weeks around financial services, health and defence. As a combined authority, we're continuing to engage with sector teams in government on industrial strategy, and in parallel updating the cluster action plans that we committed to produce as part of our local growth plan. So noting the point made earlier around support for all manufacturers and not just those who may see themselves as advanced manufacturers, and on the impact of tariffs on trading terms. Would really welcome input and comment from the committee in terms of what key messages we should be bringing into the continuing conversation with government as it develops the detail of the policy announced in those strategy documents, and any comments or additions to our ongoing work to develop the cluster action plans that we've included as appendices.
Thank you, Callum. Who'd like to come in on this item, please? Graham, please.
Thank you, Chair. And we broadly welcome this, and it's a good strategy, and it's in line with the government, and we've got our own economic inclusive strategy going to council next week. The only thing that we're a little bit concerned is we'd like a bit more engagement with some of the clusters, with some of our officers. They're a little bit isolated at the moment, so we'd like a bit more engagement, please. But broadly, yes, we welcome this.
Yeah, of course, Martin, please.
I was just intrigued on the table supporting high growth clusters, and there's a table there which is 5.1, figure 5.1 and 5.5 on here. The bottom right hand corner, there's a little subheading that said advanced materials, and beneath that a box that says wood and textiles. And I know I'm getting on a bit, but I think they've been around ages. Have you got any idea what it means genuinely? Is it? I know the textiles.
A really good question. So, off the top of my head, I don't actually. So this comes from a piece of research that we commissioned about 2 years ago. There will be supporting data about how they've identified that and grouped it within there. But no, I don't have a direct answer to your question, I'm afraid.
I think there are some other advanced materials.
Spending a lot of my time talking about gravel in my council ward at the moment. Sarah, please.
I mean, I actually think that some of the textiles are very advanced. I think some of the textile stuff, I know I've had conversations with people, I can't remember quite where, possibly in this committee or possibly the business board, about advanced textiles actually, and that being quite an important growth area of innovation and growth. But anyway, that's I think so the UK industrial strategy highlights 5 priority sectors which align well with our economic strengths in Calderdale and emerging opportunities, and we think that we've probably got quite there's quite a lot of potential for us to play quite a distinctive role as a borough, as the small partner borough, partly through our sort of geography, which I'll come on to in a bit. But I think we could be playing quite a distinctive role in West Yorkshire's growth story, contributing to inclusive regional prosperity and also levelling up. So we've got, lots of priorities and opportunities in advanced manufacturing, in clean energy, in creative industries, in advanced digital technologies, in the professional business services. But I think to maximise our role in the regional growth plan, I think we really need to champion our sector strengths and ensure that the combined authorities us as a combined authority include secondary growth nodes like Halifax alongside Leeds and Bradford, that there's place-sensitive delivery of regional programmes, so for digital adoption, retrofit skills, that sort of thing, and making sure that Calderdale's SMEs and residents directly benefit from that. And I think recognising that, our potential in Calderdale for clustering and connectivity. So Halifax could be a really good bridge between Manchester and between Leeds and Manchester. We're positioned there, looking at the lovely. We're sort of pretty much halfway. Halifax is pretty much halfway between Leeds and Manchester, and I think that could provide a really positive bridge. Which could attract maybe businesses that are priced out of larger cities. It's cheap in Halifax. Come to Halifax. Base your business there in Calderdale. And also positioning Calderdale as a test bed for innovation. I think that's really important. Backing pilot schemes in Calderdale for smart technologies, low carbon heat, and long duration energy storage. Could be really good in order to demonstrate clean energy adoption in mid-sized economies. So I think we might be the small partner in the region, but actually I think we've got a huge amount to offer, and I think sometimes actually our small size can actually be quite a positive thing, as well as our good location bridging east and west.
Thank you. Barney, please.
Yeah, I'm quite interested in the cluster action plans, although I have to say I've got a lot of ignorance. Another layer and another area of ignorance. But it seems, from a small business point of view, which is what I suppose the viewpoint I'm taking, is there's a real trick, isn't there, to making sure that they get those at the moment who are there and help lift them, but not make it exclusive and stop people coming in. And I think, because, once we've used wood, we're going to find new materials. There's probably going to be small businesses who are finding these and developing them. And how do we get them into? How do we make sure they're not cut off? Because there's going to be natural protectionism. I mean, it's quite interesting that in the cluster action plans you included, most of them, I think, if not all of them, do cite the research from the CBI, which sort of shows where the thinking's come from this, which isn't a bad thing, but has the thinking come from the bottom as well. And in terms of where the expertise is coming, I think that the plans there understand how institutions like universities can play a part in this, but I don't think they're understanding how experts in small business, there's a lot of consultants who have got considerable experience and knowledge who can also play a part in these, and I'm not sure it's worked out how we get them in. And I don't think that's an easy thing to do, but I think that would really make these stronger and better, and actually into the long-term development, that's what we are going to need to do, I think.
Thank you. Carl, please.
Thank you, Chair. My barely formed thoughts or suggestions on it really is, and this might not be the right, but I do think there's a connection to other things we've discussed about skills and business growth, and that's the issue of supply chains. And how we maximise the potential to utilise local skills, local employment, local businesses in the development of these strategies. And I just would like to see that connection made where we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like? Henry, please.
Yeah, it's building on those points. I think these plans are excellent. But I think the thing that's missing for me when I've gone through them is what the actual opportunity is, and maybe just trying to pull that out a bit more, which might be about supply chain. So where is this region particularly strong? What are the drivers and the policies coming through from government? What is the opportunity for our businesses, so we can really start positioning ourselves and the organisations that represent businesses, whether they're sector specific or industry specific, can also help to start positioning them. And supply chain might be a good lens to look at that to start off with. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Yeah, so obviously, I'm not going to sort of talk through all of the opportunities that I think that we've got in Calderdale, but I mean, are you aware, has that been communicated by officers, all the different bits of, I don't know if Dom has been in touch and, sort of said all the different areas of opportunity within each cluster, because I think if they have, and if every area's done that, then that would be really good to be able to make sure that's out there and people know about.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come in? Callum, please.
Yes, thank you all for those comments. So we'll build those into the draft plans as we're developing them. So, and there's a couple of key actions there for us to take away too. So in terms of following up with officials, each of our partner authorities, to make sure we're bringing out those opportunities for the region and for those individual areas as well. And then some other actions as well about thinking about supply chains as a key opportunity and how that translates horizontally across each of these plans, as well as identifying the opportunities to bring in that expertise from smaller businesses as well as those which are larger presences in those clusters as they currently are. So thanks again.
Thank you. And if everybody's happy with the recommendations on that item to tie up those loose ends, that's great. We'll move on to item 12, please, Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. So this paper really is just about providing a brief update on progress on developing the Tier 1 business support universal online platform. Put into a bit more plain English, that's the website element of that new approach to business support that we're currently developing and that was previously discussed at the committee. There's a bit of a quick recap on Tier 1. It's about the support that will provide that platform to showcase a full range of business support available across private and public sectors, providing universal access point for businesses to free, impartial information and signposting to the various support services and online tools that might be available. So really helping those businesses to kind of navigate that complex landscape that we know exists. It'll provide information and support for all those businesses, irrespective of size, sector or business stage. I think that's a really important point. And we're working very hard to make sure that it aligns with the emerging National Business Growth Service offer, which is something that's a bit of a moving feast, but we are getting more information, and some of that will be launched later this month, so that will give us a bit more certainty to how to take some of this work forward. Not least in ensuring that we've got those clear referral routes, any links and potential for shared services within that as well. We also need, I think, in that work to ensure it represents the offer not just of the CA, but of our wider network of partners, with clear links to where the support exists. We've kind of discussed some of that around the table already today, but that's a really important element of this work. The work itself is being led by the CA's digital team, and it's been undertaken as part of a wider redevelopment of the CA's website, so I think that's an important context. The report in the pack briefly outlines kind of the work that we've undertaken to date and some of the key next steps, but that includes things like we held a series of scoping workshops back in February and March, designed to understand the needs of stakeholders. So that included sessions with representatives from businesses, from business support delivery organisations, membership organisations, as well as members of the CA's business board and various thematic committees. And feedback from those sessions has been used to inform the development of structure, kind of the wireframing of the site and content design, alongside kind of work looking at kind of wider desk-based analysis, research and benchmarking, just to make sure that we're getting the best out of this as we can. So following that feedback, work's well underway now to develop kind of detailed site, page structure, visual designs and content. And we're going to be looking to undertake further engagement with stakeholders over the next sort of weeks and months as part of planned content development and user testing. So looking at opportunities to how we can involve stakeholders to make sure we're getting that right. And we'd look to opportunities to involve any members of this committee who might want to be involved in that work. The timeline is such that we're looking for a soft launch alongside the wider CA website for rollout sometime in the autumn. And then we'll work to add, refine and develop content as we continue through the remainder of this year, kind of aligned with that broader implementation of the wider support review. So very brief update, but happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Barney, please?
Yeah, really quickly, hopefully. The business growth service, I think, when I first heard about the business growth service, I thought, well, are we duplicating it? But the more I think about it, the more I think they can really complement each other. So I think there's nothing to be scared of for any of us here, is there? With having the two things operating side by side, particularly as businesses don't always work to the geographies that administrative boundaries do. And the other thing I'd just say, I'd be happy to help with any work you want to do. With my clarity of thought, I'm sure I could be quite helpful.
Thanks for that offer. Sarah, please.
Thank you. It's this that universal online platforms a really welcome step to improve business support, and especially for Coaldale's micro and small SME businesses. It's really helpful. I think just to ensure local relevance, it'd be really good to make sure that there is some local content on there as well for each of the 5 authorities. LA specific support events and also networks, if they could all be sort of clearly signposted. Now I don't know how, I'm not going to even start suggesting, because that's not my area of expertise, but I just think, and also in terms of user experience, just making sure that it's really simple to navigate through all of those. So whether someone's looking at a geographic or a sector based thing, that those are really clear and really inclusive, especially for sole traders, people who are maybe have lower digital competence or maybe are just really time poor. If you're a sole trader or just a partner or something, you might not have a lot of time to devote to that, but you still might need to get the support. In terms of engagement, it'd be great if Coaldale businesses were engaged. Business networks in Coaldale were and intermediaries were involved in the development and promotion, just to help maximise uptake. Really, I mean, I think it's often said, you know, if you go around, I'm sure other councils see this, if you go around to your local and chat to your local businesses, whether it's shops or people, you know, running different sorts of businesses, and people just don't know what support's out there. They don't know how to find it. Often it's through accountants and stuff like that. You know, that's often where people get support through. So just making sure that everyone's plugged in to know what's there, and on that, just a targeted local rollout plan to make sure that you know, trust and awareness is covered. But I think this model offers a real potential, but just must reflect local need to deliver inclusive and accessible support. But yeah, it's really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig, please.
Thank you, Chair. I found this really interesting, actually. And I've got 2 points. One, to back up what Sarah was saying, actually. Someone who is under pressure, working long hours in a business, navigating the complex business landscape, as you mentioned, doesn't want to learn how to navigate a complex website. So it's got to be easy to use and get around. And in terms of engagement, I'm just wondering if, when we do start to launch it, whether there will be workshops in different areas to tell people about it, show them the functionality, or visiting businesses to help them with that and to help with the uptake. The second one, in terms of startups, I myself became a sole trader 2 years ago after many years of being employed, and the business side of it sometimes takes away from the passion of a certain service or product, and sometimes people are put off just by that. So it would be good if we had as part of it like a one-stop shop for the foundations of a business, you know, how to set up an employee pay system, business insurance, tax, different sections that just kind of say you need to have all these in place so that they can actually have more time free to focus on the service or the product.
Thanks, Craig. Martin, please.
Yeah, hi, and I've got a slightly different view on the National Business Growth Service. But this is the South North London bias again. And that's that my fear is it's not developed around services, so we've not thought what do businesses need. What we've got is existing products that the government has decided business need, and they're now looking to access that market using the local market. And so I think it will be there eventually, but that's my fear with it. There's too many other services that are offered and delivered nationally, which just don't appeal to or address the needs of businesses in this area, some of which have been mentioned in this committee and definitely on the business group as well.
Thank you. Can't see anybody else with hands up. Andrew, is there anything you want to come back on, please? Oh, sorry, Graham, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to add to what Sarah says, the success of this will be how we roll it out. That's going to be the real thing. It's getting that information out to people so they can access it. No matter how good it is, no matter how easy it is to use, if people don't know about it, it won't succeed. And that's always been a problem with any web-based system or anything. How do we roll it out to people? How do we get them to know each other? Because I know that in my ward, there's businesses 3 miles apart that don't know each other exist. They can be quite insecure business at times because they've got their head down, burying in the work, cracking on. So the success will depend on how we get it out there, and that's going to be the challenge to you. I'm sure it's doable, but it will be a challenge.
Thank you. Sarah again.
Could we get HMRC to advertise it for us? Because that's probably the one service that every single business, or one service, but you know, just.
Thank you. Martin again, please.
Sorry, it's just a comment. The interaction that businesses have with HMRC is really limited now. It really is. You give it to your accountant and walk away, and so it just there's no sort of face-to-face. I can't remember the last time I got a letter, but then I only deal in cash.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in? Andrew, is there anything you want to wrap up with, please?
Just to say, like others have, thank you very much for all those comments, some really good insights, and we'll make sure we're considering those in the development. I think on the growth hub point that you made, Martin, in particular, it is quite product based, but I think they are putting local growth hubs at the centre of local delivery, so we have an opportunity to shape and steer that, and our focus is very much about how do we make this accessible to business through thematic methods so that they understand what we're looking at and we speak in a language they get.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 13, please, Michelle. Sorry.
Thanks very much. So this paper summarises some work that has been led jointly by the Combined Authority and Wakefield Council over the last 6 months or so, and it's specifically to look at the lower proportion of people among the Wakefield population that are qualified at higher levels, so at level 4 and above, which is broadly the first year of a degree. And Wakefield really is an outlier on this, so not only against national statistics, where we're talking about nearly 40% of the national population, compared to only 28% in Wakefield, and the rest of West Yorkshire is much closer to that national average as well. So a real outlier in Wakefield, and something that we really want to understand the impact that it has on the local economy, on people's career prospects, and on their lives. So a commission was set up, chaired by Professor Chris Husbands, who is the former Vice-Chancellor of Sheffield Hallam University. And what the commission sought to do is to explore this problem completely objectively, to understand what the causes were and what the potential solutions could be. Now, the commission will publish its report in September, but we wanted to share with you today some of the early findings and kind of key themes. One of the findings is that this is complex, and that there is not one cause of the situation, but it is particularly contributed to by the following things. One is weak demand for skilled labour. So the way that the Wakefield's economy is currently structured, residents feel that there is little point to upskilling beyond a certain level because the jobs aren't there. And there's quite in-depth research that's gone into this. So over 800 residents have been directly consulted, as well as employers, education providers as well. So while there is good attainment in schools and there is a high level of ambition and aspiration, there isn't that visibility and line of sight to highly skilled jobs. So you've got that weak demand. Also got significant barriers to upskilling. That includes transportation, includes accessible and affordable childcare, and other financial constraints. And so we've set out here the recommendations are likely to be around the following kind of 4 things, which appear under point 3.16 in the paper. So a focus on innovation assets, on understanding the innovation potential of the industrial base already in Wakefield, and where the potential is for growth, and focusing on the potential to focus on innovation as a driver for high-level skills to create that demand that isn't there at the moment. In order to anticipate and service that, work with learning providers, education and training to design and test innovative learning solutions, and to look at addressing some of those barriers. And then, as you would expect, focus on the potential that further devolution could present to deliver against some of these ambitions. And we wanted to flag with you that there will be the opportunity to engage further over the summer period before this is launched, probably in September. But I also wanted to, to highlight this as a really good way of focusing on a local problem and really bringing a range of different perspectives together to explore it in the round from quite an objective perspective.
Thanks, Michelle. Unfortunately, there's nobody from Wakefield Council here at today's meeting, but is there anybody, obviously, been a very big part of bringing this work together? Is there anybody who'd like to come in? Martin, please.
Yeah, sorry, obviously I've worked in Wakefield for a number of years and worked closely with the council on this. It's been a real joint effort by all of those involved in education, in business, and in other public sector organisations, the large ones in particular, who are massive employers, to engage with this process. And it's been it's really well chaired, and they're asking some great questions of people. And I think that those just initial things that they've identified sort of show how thorough they've been. So I welcome it, and I'm really looking forward to reading their recommendations.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in? I don't see anybody, so if everybody's happy with the recommendations, we'll move on to item 14. I've got Sarah Michelle. Don't know who's going first, please.
Sarah's at the top of the paper, I'll go first. So the paper earlier, the business growth paper, set out our future direction of travel and the kind of where we're going to be heading. But there's also a lot of existing work already underway and activity that's aligned to that future ambition. So I'm not going to go through this report in any great detail, but I'm going to pick out a few highlights of activity that's been taking place. So back in April, the Combined Authority approved the new Health Tech Accelerator as part of the investment zone investment, which is probably the biggest investment and the flagship kind of in the revenue space anyway. And that'll be around supporting businesses to receive that incentive support, masterclasses to help start-ups and scale-ups actually to drive their agendas and drive those businesses forward, so they can support that investment zone growth potential. A couple of weeks ago, the Mayor launched the Women in Manufacturing Engineering Network, which is a fantastic network trying to inspire and create that next generation actually of females in the manufacturing sector. Had an impromptu visit from the Secretary of State as well as part of that. Over 100 business leaders involved, and that's really about that inspiration piece, and aligns very much with the industrial strategy ambition around increasing female representation in the sector by 2035. Couple of very small points around. We're in the mix in terms of AI growth zones and submitted bids to be part of that conversation. Still awaiting to hear in that space. And a couple of programmes that have continued for this next year aligned to kind of UK SPF funding. So Growing the Green Economy project is continuing for another year, and a few other kind of programmes in that space. Things like the Good Growth programme and the Leadership and Management programme are also continuing, all set out in the paper. The other area I wanted to kind of just mention is the Mayor's Big Ideas Challenge competition. So this is challenge-based innovation, mission-led innovation. The challenge is based in two areas, young people and SMEs. The young persons one, we've had the first cohort that took place a couple of weeks ago. Then some young winners took part in an exercise with the Mayor after Climb to celebrate the success and celebrate them getting through that first phase, and they'll be supported on that with their idea going forward. So again, a great opportunity there to stimulate that enterprise and entrepreneurial mindset across our young people. And the only other kind of one I wanted to flag is the compact that we are looking at developing with the universities, Combined Authority and the universities, to identify areas where we can work collaboratively, where we can join forces to achieve those kind of local growth ambitions as set out in the local growth plan.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then in terms of the employment and skills kind of updates that come in from 3.26 onwards, we focused in particular here on adult skills delivery, where, as this committee will know, the Combined Authority has got a really important role around the strategic commissioning of adult skills provision across a number of different funding streams. Lindsay has, of course, updated you on future plans, but what you have here is a link to the 23-24 impact report, which I'd really recommend you take a look at, and then some more recent data around the participation in that programme. We've included some examples of some of the courses that are being commissioned, particularly through skills boot camps, which are about people retraining and upskilling in some of the most in-demand areas of the economy. You will be pleased, I'm sure, that a lot of the courses that are being commissioned directly align with local growth plan priorities, artificial intelligence, creative and cultural, and we've got procurement around training out all the time, really. So we've got tendering underway at the moment. We've got the final information around Multiply, which is an adult numeracy programme, a national programme which is now completed. And we've included information around the work and health programmes, now badged Healthy Working Life, where there is a for information paper after this which provides more data there. But there really has been a rapid growth in the regional role around this agenda. And that's been very much a work in partnership between many regional and local organisations, and you have an update here around some of that. And finally, around education and training. So for 10 years now, the Combined Authority has had a role on the careers agenda to support collaboration between secondary schools and employers in order to improve the careers destinations of our young people. You've got a summary here of some of the things that we've been doing, and we hope that some of the newer priorities will provide a real step change to build on some of that good practice.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Alex, please.
It's not going to be a surprise what I'm about to say. You've obviously got an FE compact, you're doing a HE compact.
Yeah.
You have some incredible training providers as assets in your region that are doing some of the things already that you are looking to do. So if you're going to recognise HE and FE, then you should recognise all types of providers that are assets in your region.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Yeah, just sort of regarding the creative industries, I think the committee might be interested to note that £1.5 million of additional fund has been approved for the You Can Make It Here programme at the February Combined Authority meeting, increasing the project funding to £4.2 million overall, and the project delivery period, extending the project delivery period to March 2027, which is great. And the scheme supports the diversification, growth and potential of cultural, creative and sports industries across the region, across the Combined Authority region. And obviously creative industries are really important for us and a priority for us in Calderdale. The opportunity cost of this decision for investment in our total business support offer and its alignment in terms of both principles and timings with the business growth item that we've already had are not entirely clear about how it sort of like fits in with all of that. And I also feel like it was a bit of a gap not to have maybe included that in the update, possibly, because I don't know if other people might have missed that as a thing. And it's not. I mean, I know 1.5 million isn't a huge amount of extra, but actually that is quite significant. It also feels that there remains little visibility at an officer level regarding the implementation of the next phase of the Fair Work Charter. Obviously, there was approval in February this year for an additional nearly £1 million, again bringing the total investment up to 1.5 million. And the report sets out the development of an emergent strategy, but not really much else. An update on actions taken and impact achieved during the first quarter of 25-26 would be really useful, along with opportunities for alignment with the healthy working life employer incentives, which are still being worked up. Because that's been set as an intention at the March Economy Committee. So I just think some more information about how that's all sort of working and going, and yeah, how that can be maybe more targeted would be really good. Yeah, and also just sort of useful to flag up the importance of Employment West Yorkshire, the importance of the core infrastructure for delivering outcomes, and just sort of to set an expectation of future funding beyond March 2026. And I think that's be quite good to know where we're up to with that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Barney, please.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that this sort of report is really good to get at this committee, because most of the stuff we're spending our time on is looking at current problems and how we're addressing current problems without ever knowing if we're going to get there. So actually hearing back about things that have been decided in the past and we have made some progress on sometimes quite wicked issues, I think is a really good way of keeping us focused and just maybe keeping some of the energy going at times. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Alex, please.
Yeah, just on the healthy working lives bit, it's not clear where skills fits into that. Are we still waiting to see? Is that going to come out of the new skills strategy? I'm just not sure how skills fits into the healthy working life strategy, approach, initiative. And therefore, I'm not sure then what to pay on to my providers and members to say how they can contribute to it. So if there is something more coming out around how skills helps the Healthy Working Life campaign, that'd be good to know.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in? Sarah Michelle, is there anything you want to come back to now on those comments?
Yeah, thank you. So, creative industries, it's a really valid point actually. That is an omission. I think part of the challenge is we've got a separate culture and creative, committee. So, but we need to get better at joining the dots. I absolutely take that point, and that same applies on things like green economy and decarbonisation. Absolutely, where there are those growth opportunities for this committee. On the Fair Work Charter, so the Fair Work Charter, the approval is very much, the approval and the discussion with the steering group was very much around bringing that in-house and embedding it across everything that we do. So whilst we're doing the development work on everything else we do, particularly the new business support model, it's intrinsically aligned to that. But we can bring something back for the next committee and make sure we update. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So there were quite a few points raised there around the importance of our extremely well-networked ITP sector, which is a real asset to the region. I think that is really important, that in the Region of Learning and Creativity strategy we emphasise the strategic importance of the sector. Healthy working life and skills is a really great question. Actually, a lot of the time, that is primarily about those schemes are primarily about the join up between the health system and employment support. But of course, it is often, perhaps usually, the case that where people have got a health barrier to work, they also have some kind of skills need, and it is really important that we join up the system, and that absolutely features in the thinking. We do have strong skills representation in working groups, and as schemes develop, it will be really, really important that routes to engagement with people include education and training institutions, which may be where someone with health barriers to work presents themselves rather than through a clinical route. So I think it's a good point that even though they're not skills interventions, the person probably needs support from across different parts of the system, which is of course what it's all about. Employment West Yorkshire is currently a fundamental part of the employment support system here in West Yorkshire. It will be really important that we continue to work with local authorities and other partners, particularly through the Pathfinder, which looks at how the new Jobs and Career Service will work, to ensure that we learn the lessons from Employment West Yorkshire as, of course, a flagship programme, to make sure we've got that local support for people across West Yorkshire.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Yeah, and I suppose just a plea in that sort of focusing on local and using, we've talked earlier about the importance of the VCSE in these things, and I think sometimes when people have got those real barriers to work, and I think this is a real sort of thing that we sort of feel through our inclusive economy work, is that having someone coming from that they don't know, from an organisation that they don't understand, to try and help them, encourage them back into economic activity is just a non-starter. And I think it's those local connections that are so vital, and that's not a Calderdale thing, that's across the whole country. It's like it might be someone in their church group or someone at their local community centre is the person best placed to encourage them through that pathway. So it's and I know sort of through the UK SPF sort of stuff, where there's obviously quite a lot of in our hyperlocal work that we did through the UK SPF funding, was about sort of making those connections and helping people through into that pathway. And I think our hyperlocal programme was really successful connecting up communities. And I think, obviously, this is different, but I just think that we need to be learning some of those lessons and really being mindful that, yeah, I mean, someone from the state, whoever that is, you know, people don't make any distinction necessarily, especially if they're not in a great space. But that hyperlocal, that local connection is just so fundamentally important. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, please.
It's not necessarily to do with this agenda item. You've just mentioned the word hyperlocal, and it springs something for your section, Lindsay. Sorry. When we're looking at the strategy, looking at that hyperlocal need, I think the CA probably does need to look at their arrangements around subcontracting or how we use supply chains and partnerships, because we are missing some and have lost some hyper local brilliant provision through ESF or UK SPF that's going to be gone. And at the moment, the current kind of rules around subcontracting will just, or even procurement rules anyway, your rules around turnover capacity that you have to have, just wipes out a load of really great provision and providers. So I think as part of that strategy, looking at how we do use more supply chain or consortium approaches and not just that kind of blanket ban on subcontracting. Sorry.
I think that's right, Alex, but I think Sarah was saying something about just utilising social capital in communities generally for getting messages out there, whether they are, you know, contracted relationships or not, and I think it's fundamental because that's the only way we're going to make all this work. So it's kind of, you know, networks of networks, utilising them efficiently.
Thank you. Great. If we've wrapped up the item 14, everybody's happy with the recommendations. We're on the last couple of items, which are for information. If anybody's got anything to flag up, please let us know. So the first one of those is item 15, the work and health paper. Sarah, please.
Sorry. I mean, it's so, as I think I said at the beginning, it's so important that we have all of these things joined up, because everything, you know, they're so interconnected. It's like a big bowl of spaghetti, isn't it? Everything's all just sort of joined up, and to try and sort of sort things out where you've just got the sauce and you've just got the pasta, it's like it doesn't work. You know, you have to have everything. I don't know why that I'm using that analogy since I have had lunch. But I think it's yeah, it's just so vital, and you know, and I know that we, you know, the transport plan is also mentioned in, you know, as one of the papers, and again that's another really vital sort of bit in the whole sort of thing. Yeah, so I just there was just a note on in the healthy the incorporation of digital inclusion programme is mentioned in the Healthy Working Life Board in the paper. It doesn't appear in the terms of reference. Is that should it do? That's just a question. That's just a sorry little techie thing. Yeah, and I think on individual incentives, I think the fact that the final approach hasn't been agreed yet for this is a 1-year programme and we're already in July is possibly slightly concerning. And I know that combined authority officers are pushing for an emphasis on addressing transport barriers. So local authority teams have suggested possibly a flexible approach that aligns resources to VCSE sector to deploy as part of their delivery of the programme. So I suppose just bringing in, you know, making sure that that's in there again. And I'll leave it there because I know everyone wants to go home. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to flag up on work and health? Nope. Great. So we're on to item 16, which is the local transport plan pre-consultation. If anybody's got any questions or comments on this, please.
I'll save all my comments for the Transport Committee.
Excellent. Sound. Excellent. Sure, I can find you a course, can't I?
So, as if you're a member of the Transport Committee, you do get. I've been on a cab ride, and I was with Moses, who was at the committee yesterday, the housing and whatever regeneration and thingy place. Yeah, thank you. Committee, and he was just off to on a cab ride. So if you can get a place on the transport committee, you can get a cab ride.
Sit on the top of the bus and send them driving.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, great. Thank you, everybody. And I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.